So if after this training you go to get your Aperture account and you can't find it, shoot me an email and I can resend it to you. But your email from Aperture should have looked like this. And it would say like sign up for your Aperture account, and you can sign up, and then I would bookmark that page on whatever device you're going to be using. So on Aperture, you should be able to access things like the Academy training and start your course if you haven't already. And this is, you know, the introduction to the Aperture system that goes over quite a lot. And I'll put a link in the chat here to the growth strategies. This is where you'll find a lot of lesson plans and lots of materials. I'm going to open that up for you now so you can see just the wide variety of, oh, probably because I'm not logged in. Cool. So when you click on this, you're going to see growth strategies. So these are the competencies that we're going to be focusing on throughout SEL Aperture education. And if you were to click on, say, self-awareness or any of them, you're going to see all these different lesson plans, and you can even divide them by age range and like grade. So if you know you're working mostly with 3rd through 5th graders or 6th through 8th graders, it's going to have different groups and different activities for individual, small group, universal lesson plans that you can print off and use. And if you open these up, it's going to tell you exactly the kinds of materials that you need. So it's going to tell you kind of a summary of what it does, the competency. It'll tell you if you need any supplies, etc. It really kind of sets you up. So also this link that I put in the chat with growth strategies, I'd bookmark that as well. So we know that we kind of use Aperture and DESSA almost interchangeably. Think about DESSA as the assessment tool and Aperture as the curriculum. So you're going to complete the DESSA assessment 3 times a year. The first time at the end of your 2nd month, mid in March, final in June. It's going to measure the student's strengths in the 8 competencies. And it includes lesson plans and growth strategies afterwards. So you will fill out the DESSA. It's not the youth filling out the DESSA. And it's based on observations and time spent with them. So that's why we do it at the end of the 2nd month, because that gives you enough time to, you know, understand the youth at your site, really start to build those connections and, you know, other interventions with the caseload youth. And then you can fill out this observation and see, you know, what am I observing of the youth? And to do that, I'd really familiarize yourself with the DESSA, get to know what kind of questions are going to be on it. It's also important to note we don't use the DESSA mini. So in the Aperture introduction training, they probably talked about the mini a lot. We're not using the mini, we're just using the full DESSA 40. So you're going to do that 40 at the end of the 2nd month. You'll make observations. And based on those observations, you'll get a result of where the youth need instruction, and that's where you can use those growth strategies to make lesson plans for them. You should also review the results with your site supervisor. So your site supervisor is not going to do the DESSA, you will, but then you should take those results to them and discuss with them, be like, hey, I'm seeing a need for this, and this is what I'm thinking of planning, and they should be a part of that process with you. So the enrollment process to get your youth into DESSA, to do the DESSA 40, is you first enroll them into CitySpan, and then you need to email me. I'm then going to make sure that all of your youth that you've enrolled in CitySpan activities get added to your DESSA group. So that will be on me. It's really important that you email me once you do that, because then I'll know you're finished and I can get them into your DESSA for you. Then once I've done my part and I've gotten your students into the DESSA, then you'll get an email from DESSA saying the assessment is open. The assessment's open for a long period of time because we have members that start all throughout the fall. We have members that start in October and November, but you really need to be doing that DESSA assessment by the end of your 2nd month. So it might seem like the due date's way later. It might say like it's December, but it's, you know, that's to accommodate a rolling start date for members. So think about familiarizing yourself with the DESSA 40. I'll put a link to it in the chat and we can look at it as well. It's in your resource folder. I think this is going to be the whole folder, and we'll pull up the questions as they look. The internet at Harbor Highlands has been very slow. So if this doesn't load, I'll trust that you can open it up in your own time. But the DESSA 40, it's like a series of questions. And as you probably know from the training, the DESSA 40 is all positive based. So it's not making negative assumptions on youth. It's trying to think positively about their interactions so that we're gauging where they're at in a positive frame of mind and thinking about where's the need for instruction. There's nothing that these youth are doing wrong. We're just trying to help improve and help them grow in those areas of need. Try to observe in multiple settings and situations. Again, don't make an observation and be like, oh, this kid has no self-awareness because they had a bad day, or they had a day where they were really tired and couldn't focus. You know, don't make an assessment based on that time. Make it on a variety of settings. Try to get an average idea of where the youth is at and how they function on, you know, the regular basis, understanding that everyone has fluctuations in their mood and their experiences. So completed by the end of your second month. Again, we don't use the DESSA Mini. The pre-assessment's open until December 16th, but that's to accommodate later start dates. Bring notes on your youth if you have them. So if you've got that attendance sheet printed out and you've got a binder, maybe you make notes of the youth and how they're doing each day, and you could use that for your assessment as well. You should plan for the time. So it takes about 5 to 10 minutes for each youth. So if you've got a larger caseload of 30 youth and you're spending 10 minutes on all of them, you're going to definitely need to talk to your site supervisor about making sure you plan that office time into your week, especially if you're a part-time member and thinking about how you're getting your hours and making sure that this is built into your hours for the week that you do that. Rate all your caseload students within 1 week of each other so that they're kind of, you know, set in the same time frame. We don't want kind of a scattered observation period. We want to keep it more succinct. After you complete the DESSA, you will be able to do this other training. It takes about an hour, but it will be really helpful for you to kind of brainstorm how you can analyze that data and how you can use that data. And I would recommend, you know, sharing some insights from this training with your site supervisor as well. So that you've got this data, you've got the idea of who needs instruction. Well, how are you going to use that data at your site? And that's where making the plan will come into play. So you're going to determine a competency to focus on for each student. So if your student has need for instruction in multiple competencies, I would say pick one and focus on that for the first term through like March. It doesn't mean you don't use other competency SEL lesson, just doesn't mean you don't have other teachable moments, but maybe you're building more SEL in that competency for that youth, if that makes sense. You're going to report the T-score, area focus, and DESSA results into a Google spreadsheet. I've already shared these with you, but I can share them with you again closer to. I'd bookmark it once you have access to it. And it's going to look kind of interesting. This is, again, just the results. But it's going to look like this in the DESSA, and then you're going to put it into the spreadsheet. So I'll put this link up on the window. This is a template, so you'll all have your own. You'll have edit access to only your own spreadsheet. And you're going to take what it looks like in the DESSA after you complete the DESSA 40. You're going to see these scores and these needs for instruction, and you're going to input them into your own spreadsheet. And this is where you're going to indicate the competency you're focusing on for each student. So in this example, Jane Doe scored 47, and the first focus area was decision making. So that means from, you know, October through March, Jane Doe's were working a lot with decision making with them. Maybe you give them a chance to choose the color that they want to use or choose the activity they want to do so that they're getting more experiencing with that. And again, you can build in more curriculum, more SEL stuff, but for Jane, we know that we're going to work on decision making with them. Then in March, you would see if there's any change. You would give the score for the first competency area, and you would choose a new competency to focus on. So that's how that spreadsheet's going to work throughout the year. You're going to be tracking every youth, their areas of need and competencies of focus throughout the term. And that's where this comes into play. So you'll have your competency guide, your foundational practices, growth strategies, and other SEL resources. So think of the competency guide from your orientation folder. So if you guys have your folders, I would encourage you to open that up and see all those different kind of cheat sheets on SEL strategies and competencies. And these are also the things you guys all acted out when you made the plan and you had the big post-it note and you kind of drew or talked about what that competency could be and how you would bring it into play. So think about using that folder and those resources. There's also the growth strategies that I sent in the chat earlier, and then there's the Google resource folder. So there's a lot of resources that you can be using. You can also use each other. I encourage you guys to reach out and say, hey, I just made a really great activity for decision making. And if you want to use it, here it is. Or maybe you reach out and you say, I'm kind of struggling with how to, make a lesson plan. Maybe someone could give you an example. You can talk to Amy about that as well, our support team member. And yeah, and the internet is your friend, but of course use caution. Make sure you're finding reputable, data-backed lesson plans and resources there. That's why the DESSA is so great and the Aperture education is data-backed, and we know that it works, so that's why we provide it for you, but you're welcome to use other resources as well. Again, we already looked at the growth strategies. I think it's really easy to use, especially great that it kind of breaks it down into grade levels. So based on your caseload and kind of where they're at, you can really plan different activities to be at the level they're at and to be on the competency you need to focus on. You can also find it this way if you don't bookmark the link I sent you. Just go under growth strategies, select one of the grades, and then you can print off these different lesson plans as PDFs or save them however you want to use them. If you ever struggle with finding the growth strategies, send me an email and I can send you the link really quickly, and then you can have it whenever you need. You can also use the U of Minnesota extension. They've got resources for you. Site-based curriculum, if your supervisors have curriculum they're already implementing, work with them to make sure that you're using that as well. You don't have to strictly use Aperture if the need at the site is having their own curriculum. You can use that as well, and other TNAC members. So in summary, you're going to plan and facilitate your interventions ideally every day, building an SEL at least every week. With your caseload, specifically twice a week for SEL is ideal. If it's every day, that's great. You track that attendance in CitySpan. You're going to work with your supervisor to incorporate this into their program, making sure that you're helping support and building that capacity they have as well. They're going to have needs. And then just share what you learn with each other and ultimately just do your best. There's a lot to take in these first couple months of service. And as long as you're just showing up and doing what you can and striving every day to learn more and to keep helping the youth, that's really important. So